The galaxy had always been a place of rules, traditions, and cautious planning. For countless millennia, the different species that had spread across the stars had formed a council to maintain order and prevent wars that could destroy entire systems. This council, made up of the most powerful and influential races, was responsible for making decisions about trade, diplomacy, and even military actions. Their word was law in many regions, and few dared to challenge their authority. But there were always voices that warned against complacency, voices that spoke of dangers hidden in the shadows, dangers that others refused to see. Among those voices were the elders, beings of incredible age and wisdom who had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They had seen entire species disappear because of arrogance, carelessness, and the failure to recognize threats before it was too late. The elders had begun observing humans long before the council even knew of their existence. From afar, humans seemed insignificant at first glance. Their home planet Earth was not technologically advanced compared to the galactic powers, and their weapons and ships were crude by cosmic standards. Humans were still developing their knowledge of space travel, barely capable of leaving their own system. Yet the elders noticed something unusual. Humans were incredibly adaptable. They could survive in the harshest environments, recover from disasters, and invent solutions to problems that seemed impossible. Where other species stagnated after reaching a certain level of development, humans kept evolving. Their intelligence was not just academic or technological, it was practical, resourceful, and above all, resilient. The elders began to sense that humans were not just another species to be observed. They were something extraordinary, something that could one day challenge even the mightiest powers in the galaxy. Concerned by what they had seen, the elders decided to approach the Galactic Council. The council chambers were vast and intimidating, a place where leaders from hundreds of species gathered. Each member represented a different civilization, some ancient and powerful, others newer but still influential. The room was filled with grandeur, banners representing countless worlds, and a sense of authority that could intimidate anyone. When the elders entered, the council members barely noticed them at first, assuming that their presence would be ceremonial, as it often was. But when the elders began to speak, their voices carried weight, calm yet firm, commanding attention. They warned the council that humans, though appearing weak and primitive, were evolving at an unprecedented rate. The council members reacted in disbelief. Many of them chuckled, thinking that the elders were exaggerating. Some openly mocked the warnings, calling humans fragile, short-lived, and limited in their abilities. They are children of a small, insignificant planet. One council member sneered. How could such a species possibly pose a threat to the grand civilizations of the galaxy? Another member laughed, adding, why waste time on speculation about humans when we have so many real problems here? The elders, however, remained calm, knowing that humans' true potential could not be measured by appearances alone. They explained that humans had survived disasters that would have wiped out entire civilizations of other species. They pointed out that humans were not only clever and resourceful, but also unpredictable, and their resilience was unmatched. Despite the elders' careful reasoning and years of accumulated wisdom, the council dismissed their warnings. They were blinded by arrogance, confident in their own power and technological superiority. They had grown used to controlling the galaxy through influence, advanced weaponry, and political maneuvering. The idea that a seemingly insignificant species from a small, blue planet could one day rival them was almost laughable. The council laughed, mocking the elders, failing to understand the subtle signs of human growth and ingenuity. Their laughter filled the chamber, a sound that, in the elders' minds, marked both ignorance and danger. The elders tried again, presenting evidence from their observations. They recounted how humans had rebuilt their cities after devastating wars, how they had innovated rapidly, creating technology that other species would consider primitive at first but which had hidden layers of genius. They spoke of human adaptability, how humans could thrive in extreme climates, how they learned from failure, and how they worked together in ways that often confounded more advanced civilizations. Yet every word was met with skepticism or outright ridicule. Some council members even suggested that humans were too violent and unrefined to survive in the long term, failing to see that their very survival instincts were a testament to their potential. The elders were frustrated but not defeated. They knew that humans' greatest strengths were subtle and slow to manifest. Unlike other species that relied on overwhelming power or sheer numbers, humans grew stronger through ingenuity, experience, and determination. They learned quickly, adapted constantly, and found creative solutions where others saw only obstacles. Their survival was not guaranteed by technology alone, but by their willingness to endure, to take risks, and to push boundaries. The elders' warnings, they realized, would not be understood until humans themselves proved their worth. As the council continued to dismiss the elders, the warnings began to feel like a prophecy. The elders knew that one day humans would surprise the galaxy in ways that no one, not even the council, could anticipate. They understood that the council's laughter was temporary, that arrogance often preceded a rude awakening. Meanwhile, on Earth, humans continued their quiet growth. They did not know that their every step was being watched by the elders, that the seeds of their future greatness were being noticed and recorded in the annals of the galaxy. The elders left council chambers with a mixture of concern and quiet confidence. They had done their part, warning those in power of a potential threat. The council, consumed by pride and disbelief, had ignored them, but the elders knew that humans' time would come. They had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and they understood the patterns of growth, adaptation, and resilience. In humans, they saw the spark of something unstoppable, a species that could survive anything, adapt to everything, and rise above challenges that would crush others. Back on Earth, humans continued their daily lives, unaware of the cosmic attention they had attracted. They built cities, explored oceans, developed technologies, and faced disasters with courage and creativity. Each victory, no matter how small, contributed to their growing potential. Each mistake, each failure, became a lesson that made them stronger. The elders watched with admiration, knowing that the humans' true power lay not in weapons or ships, but in their spirit, their intelligence, and their resilience. The council's laughter would one day turn to shock. The elders predicted those who dismissed humans as insignificant would learn the hard way that appearances could be deceiving. Humans were evolving, growing, and preparing, even if no one in the galaxy could yet see it. And when the moment came, humans would show the council and the galaxy that they were unstoppable, just as the elders had warned. Until then, the elders waited, patient and watchful, confident in the promise of a species that refused to be underestimated. The story of that day in the council chambers became a quiet legend among the elders themselves. It was a reminder that wisdom often went unheeded, that arrogance could blind even the most powerful, and that sometimes the greatest threats came from places no one expected. Humans were still young in the eyes of the galaxy, but the elders knew the truth. Their rise was inevitable. The laughter of the council was meaningless, for the seeds of human greatness had already been planted, and no amount of ridicule could stop them from growing. By the time the elders returned to their own hidden stations, they had resolved to continue watching humans closely. Every invention, every scientific breakthrough, every display of courage was a step toward proving the council wrong. They recorded their observations meticulously, noting patterns of adaptability, resilience, and intelligence that no other species exhibited to the same degree. Humans, in all their unpredictability and seeming vulnerability, were becoming a force the galaxy would soon have to reckon with. The warning had been given. The council had ignored it, and the elders knew that history, as always, would eventually vindicate those who could see beyond the surface. The humans, underestimated and overlooked, were quietly preparing themselves for a future in which they would not just survive, but dominate, adapt, and astonish the entire galaxy. The elders' faith in them never wavered, for they had witnessed the beginnings of something extraordinary, a spark that could not be extinguished, no matter how much the council laughed. Even though the Galactic Council had laughed at the warnings of the elders, life on Earth continued as it always had. Humans did not know that their every action was being watched by ancient beings across the galaxy. They went about their lives, facing struggles that seemed ordinary to them, but extraordinary from an outsider's perspective. Wars, natural disasters, economic crises, and social conflicts shaped their world, testing the limits of their resilience and adaptability. In many ways, these challenges prepared humans for something far bigger than they could ever imagine.
Each difficulty forced them to grow, innovate, and learn lessons that would later prove invaluable. At first, humans seemed fragile. They were physically weaker than many other species in the galaxy, and their technology was primitive compared to the fleets and weapons of alien civilizations. But humans had something that could not be measured by machines or charts: an incredible will to survive and to improve. When faced with adversity, they did not give up. Instead, they adapted. Cities destroyed by natural disasters were rebuilt stronger. Societies torn apart by war eventually found ways to unite and rebuild. Even in moments of despair, humans discovered creativity and resourcefulness that allowed them to overcome the odds. It was in these small victories that their true potential began to emerge. One of the most remarkable aspects of humans was their ingenuity. They were able to solve problems in ways that no one had anticipated. Engineers, scientists, and ordinary people alike came up with innovations that changed the course of their history. Humans had an unusual ability to learn quickly from mistakes. Where other species might repeat errors until failure was inevitable, humans studied every setback, learned its lessons, and adapted. This constant process of trial and error made them stronger, smarter, and more prepared for future challenges. Even when other civilizations dismissed them as primitive, humans quietly advanced, step by step, building a foundation for something extraordinary. Humans also had an innate, ability to work together in ways that were surprising to outsiders. While they could be divided by politics, religion, or nationality, when faced with a common challenge, they could unite with extraordinary effectiveness. In times of crisis, humans often put aside differences to achieve a shared goal. This sense of cooperation was not just strategic. It was instinctive. Even though humans often fought among themselves, when they encountered a threat that endangered all of them, they displayed remarkable coordination. This trait, unnoticed by the Council, is one of the key reasons why humans were quietly becoming unstoppable. Meanwhile, technology on Earth continued to develop at a rapid pace. Humans invented machines, transportation systems, and communication networks that allowed them to connect and organize like never before. They explored the oceans, mapped the stars, and sent probes into space. Each technological advancement, no matter how small, increased their knowledge and expanded their potential. Humans learned to harness energy in new ways, to build structures that defied natural limitations, and to create tools that amplified their abilities. Every step forward, whether in medicine, engineering, or computing, was a testament to their relentless curiosity and drive to improve. What set humans apart from many other species was their unpredictability. They did not always act according to logic or strategy in the way more experienced civilizations expected. Sometimes their decisions seemed chaotic, even reckless. But this unpredictability was a hidden strength. It made humans difficult to anticipate and even more difficult to control. While other species relied on rigid hierarchies or strict rules, humans often relied on creativity, intuition, and adaptability. Their ability to improvise, to find solutions in the middle of crises, made them a species that no one could fully understand or predict. As humans faced global challenges, they developed resilience that went beyond physical endurance. They became emotionally and mentally tough, learning to cope with loss, hardship, and uncertainty. Their history was filled with examples of people and communities rising from devastation. Natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, and hurricanes tested their survival skills, while wars and conflicts forced them to make difficult decisions. Economic hardships and social struggles taught them patience, perseverance, and the importance of cooperation. All of these experiences, combined with their natural intelligence, were quietly shaping humans into a species that could overcome any obstacle. Another key factor in human growth was their ability to learn from history. Unlike some civilizations that repeated the same mistakes for generations, humans studied the past to avoid failure in the future. They recorded their achievements and their failures, analyzing causes and consequences to improve outcomes. Education, libraries, and institutions of learning became central to human progress. Each generation built upon the knowledge of the previous one, creating a continuous cycle of improvement. This accumulation of knowledge allowed humans to accelerate their development, making them stronger, smarter, and more capable with every passing year. Humans were also remarkable in their ability to adapt to environments that would destroy other species. They settled in deserts, forests, mountains, and icy regions. They built shelters to survive extreme climates and developed technologies to manipulate their surroundings. They learned to grow food in harsh conditions, to purify water, and to create energy sources that supported their growing populations. Even when faced with environmental challenges, humans did not give up. They experimented, innovated, and found ways to thrive. This adaptability, combined with intelligence and resilience, made humans a species unlike any other in the galaxy, socially and culturally. Humans developed complexity that further strengthened them. They created systems of government, commerce, and law that allowed societies to function despite internal differences. They created art, literature, and music, expressing ideas, emotions, and experiences that united them in ways beyond survival. These cultural achievements fostered creativity and collaboration and allowed humans to solve problems in innovative ways. They developed empathy, communication, and teamwork, which became essential tools in navigating both internal and external challenges. In a galaxy that often underestimated them, humans were quietly becoming a force to be reckoned with, even as humans continued to advance. They remained underestimated by the galaxy at large. The Galactic Council still laughed at the warnings of the Elders, confident that no species as small and seemingly primitive as humans could ever pose a threat. Yet the Elders' observations proved correct. Humans were growing stronger in ways that could not be measured by technology alone. Their adaptability, resilience, creativity, and cooperation were forming a foundation that would one day challenge the most advanced civilizations by the time humans were reaching milestones in space exploration. Technology and social development, the Elders were already taking notice. They observed every new discovery, every technological breakthrough, and every display of resilience. They recognized patterns that indicated humans were not just surviving, they were evolving faster than any other species. Each success, no matter how small it seemed, was a step toward a future that the Council had dismissed. The Elders began to realize that humans were preparing without knowing it. For challenges that no other species could have predicted, this period of quiet growth on Earth was essential to the humans' eventual rise. Their struggles, though seemingly ordinary to them, were shaping skills and abilities that would be invaluable in the future. Humans were learning how to survive, adapt, cooperate, and innovate under pressure. They were becoming not only technologically capable, but strategically clever, emotionally resilient, and creatively unpredictable. Every challenge they faced contributed to their development, making them stronger, smarter, and more prepared than any outsider could imagine. The humans' rise was not marked by spectacle or grand announcements. It was quiet, gradual, and persistent. They did not seek recognition or validation from the rest of the galaxy. Instead, they focused on overcoming their immediate challenges, building their knowledge, and improving themselves. In doing so, they unknowingly prepared for a moment that would change the perception of their species forever. The Elders watched this growth with admiration, knowing that humans were becoming a species that could not be stopped once they reached their full potential. By the time the Council realized the truth, humans would already have passed the point of being underestimated. Their ability to adapt, learn, and overcome had become their greatest weapon. What the Council saw as weakness, apparent chaos, imperfection, and unpredictability was actually their greatest strength. Humans were not bound by tradition, rules, or expectations. They could think creatively, act decisively, and adapt instantly. This combination of traits made them a species unlike any other in the galaxy. The Elders' warnings had been accurate. The humans, though underestimated and dismissed, were growing in ways that no one else could see. Their adaptability, intelligence, resilience, creativity, and teamwork were quietly forming a foundation for something extraordinary. While the Galactic Council laughed and ignored the danger, humans were evolving, preparing, and becoming unstoppable. Each victory, each survival, and each innovation added to their strength, creating a species that would one day challenge the very powers that had mocked them. Asterisk.
Humans were still young in the cosmic timeline, but their rise had already begun. The struggles they faced on Earth, the ingenuity they displayed, and the resilience they showed in the face of adversity were shaping a future that would astonish the galaxy. The Elders continued to watch, confident that humans were on a path toward greatness. And though the Council still laughed, their time would come, the moment when humans would prove that they were unstoppable. Exactly as the Elders had predicted, the Galactic Council had continued to dismiss the warnings of the Elders, laughing at the idea that humans could ever become a serious threat. For centuries, humans had remained largely unnoticed beyond their own solar system. Their technology was considered primitive by galactic standards, and their small, blue planet seemed insignificant when compared to the massive empires and advanced civilizations that controlled the galaxy. But the Elders had observed humans quietly tracking their progress from afar. They knew that appearances could be deceiving. Humans were not only surviving, they were growing, adapting, and becoming increasingly unpredictable. The first real sign of human potential emerged when a scouting fleet from the Galactic Council entered Earth's solar system. Their mission was routine: assess the threat level of a primitive species and, if necessary, intervene to prevent any future disruption. The Council assumed the humans would be easy to ignore, or, if necessary, eliminate. The fleet was confident, armed with powerful ships, advanced weapons, and centuries of experience in dealing with civilizations far weaker than their own. They had faced countless species that had tried to resist them, and none had succeeded. Humans, they believed, would be just another easy conquest. But the moment the scouts arrived, things did not go as expected. Humans reacted in ways that were completely unforeseen. While their ships were technologically inferior, humans displayed remarkable strategic thinking. They used creative tactics to defend their territory, employing techniques that no other species had ever considered. Small, nimble ships maneuvered in ways that confused the Council's automated targeting systems. Humans made rapid real-time adjustments to their formations, using the environment of space itself to their advantage. The fleet quickly realized that they had underestimated the humans, and what was meant to be a simple reconnaissance mission was turning into a dangerous and unpredictable encounter. The humans' ingenuity went beyond tactics alone. They used technology in ways that were unexpected and innovative. Earth's engineers had developed systems that allowed ships to communicate instantly across great distances, coordinate maneuvers, and exploit weaknesses in enemy ships. Their sensors, though primitive by galactic standards, were adapted to detect movement and anticipate attacks with precision. Humans were combining intelligence, creativity, and intuition in ways that made them extremely difficult to predict. The Council's fleet, trained to deal with more conventional adversaries, struggled to respond. Every maneuver they attempted was countered with unexpected strategies, forcing them to retreat and rethink their approach. The elders watched this unfolding with a sense of grim satisfaction. They had warned the Council that humans were not to be underestimated, and now their warnings were being proven true. Humans, though appearing weak and unprepared, were demonstrating an adaptability and intelligence that was entirely unexpected. They were using their limitations as strengths, turning what other species might consider disadvantages into advantages. Their small numbers, lack of heavy weaponry, and relative inexperience in space were irrelevant compared to their ability to think creatively, act decisively, and respond unpredictably. This was a species unlike any the galaxy had encountered before. One of the most remarkable aspects of the humans' defense was their ability to coordinate under pressure. Even without a centralized command structure like the Council's fleets, humans were able to act as a single cohesive unit. Decisions were made in real time, based on changing conditions and new information. They adapted to failures quickly, learning from each encounter and immediately implementing improvements. Their resilience was extraordinary. When a ship was lost or a plan failed, humans did not panic. They reassessed, reorganized, and continued fighting, often turning setbacks into opportunities. This level of coordination and adaptability was unheard of among species that the Council considered superior. The Council was unprepared for the humans' unpredictability. Humans did not rely solely on brute force or overwhelming numbers. Instead, they combined intelligence, strategy, and resourcefulness to level the playing field. They used the very environment of space, the placement of planets, asteroids, and gravitational fields to their advantage. They devised traps, ambushes, and diversions that confounded the Council's fleet. Their small size, once seen as a weakness, became an advantage, allowing them to move quickly and strike precisely. Each engagement taught the humans new lessons, making them more formidable with every encounter as the encounters continued. Reports from the scouting fleet reached the Council chambers, causing a mix of shock and disbelief. The members who had laughed at the elders' warnings now faced evidence that humans were capable, intelligent, and highly adaptive. Panic began to spread among the Council members. They realized that the humans were not only surviving encounters with the fleet they were winning. Ships that were supposed to be inferior were disabling larger, more advanced vessels through clever tactics and coordination. The Council's confidence in their own superiority was shaken, and fear began to take hold. Meanwhile, the humans themselves were unaware of how close they were to revealing their full potential. They acted out of necessity, responding to threats as they arose, without fully understanding the scope of their achievements. Every tactic they developed, every maneuver they executed, was a product of instinct, intelligence, and teamwork. Their willingness to take risks, improvise, and think creatively allowed them to overcome challenges that would have overwhelmed other species. Even the smallest victories reinforced their confidence, teaching them that persistence, ingenuity, and adaptability could overcome any obstacle. The elders, observing from afar, recognized that humans were at a turning point. The scouting fleet had inadvertently provided humans with an opportunity to demonstrate their potential on a galactic stage. Every encounter, every battle, every strategic maneuver was evidence of humans' growing strength. The elders understood that this was only the beginning. The humans' ability to adapt, learn, and innovate under pressure would continue to grow, eventually surpassing what even the Council had assumed was possible. The seeds of greatness that the elders had seen for centuries were finally beginning to bear fruit. One of the most astonishing aspects of the humans' defense was their creativity in using limited resources. Unlike other species, which relied on advanced technology and overwhelming firepower, humans used ingenuity to compensate for their lack of raw strength. They improvised weapons, repurposed tools, and used environmental factors to their advantage. They created strategies that combined deception, misdirection, and precision, often turning a disadvantage into an unexpected victory. Each engagement taught them new lessons, which they incorporated into future encounters. constantly improving and evolving. The unpredictability of humans made them difficult to analyze or predict. Council, scientists, and strategists struggled to understand how humans thought and operated. Unlike other species, humans did not always follow established patterns or conventional logic. They were willing to take risks, to experiment, and to act in ways that defied expectation. This made them a wildcard in the galaxy, a species that could not be controlled, predicted, or underestimated. The more the Council tried to analyze humans, the more they realized that human behavior was unlike anything they had ever encountered. As the humans demonstrated their capabilities, the elders prepared for the next phase. They knew that the Council would eventually have to acknowledge the humans' potential, but they also understood that the recognition might come too late to avoid conflict. Humans had proven that they could survive encounters with advanced fleets, and they had learned valuable lessons in the process. Their intelligence, adaptability, and coordination were developing at an unprecedented rate. The elders predicted that humans would continue to grow stronger, eventually reaching a point where they could challenge even the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The first contact with the Council's scouts marked a critical turning point in human history. It was the moment when humans began to prove, in undeniable ways, that they were more than a primitive species. They had demonstrated that intelligence, creativity, adaptability, and resilience were more important than raw power or advanced technology. Each victory, each clever maneuver, and each display of resourcefulness added to the humans' growing reputation. The elders, watching with satisfaction, knew that this was just the beginning of a journey that would eventually astonish the galaxy. Humans, still unaware of the full scale of their impact, continued to act instinctively. They responded to threats, protected their homes, and defended their people. They did not do so to impress the galaxy. They did so because it was necessary to survive. This instinctive drive, combined with intelligence, creativity, and adaptability, made them formidable. Each encounter reinforced lessons of strategy, teamwork, and innovation. Even failures became valuable learning experiences, building the humans into a species that was capable of facing any challenge, no matter how daunting. By the end of these initial encounters, the Council could no longer ignore the evidence. Reports of human ingenuity, coordination, and resilience forced even the most skeptical members to reconsider their assumptions. Humans were not merely surviving, they were thriving, outsmarting, and outmaneuvering forces that had assumed they were superior. The elders' warnings, once dismissed as exaggeration, were now undeniable truth. Humans, underestimated and overlooked for so long, had begun to reveal their unstoppable nature. The first contact was more than just a military engagement. It was a revelation. Humans had shown that they could think creatively, act decisively, and adapt to situations in ways that no other species had ever demonstrated. They had transformed perceived weaknesses into strengths and demonstrated that intelligence, resilience, and cooperation could surpass even the most advanced technology. The elders watched, knowing that the seeds they had observed for centuries were finally growing into a force that would change the galaxy forever. In the aftermath, humans continued to grow, learn, and adapt. The encounters with the Council's scouts had taught them valuable lessons about strategy, coordination, and innovation. Every success and failure contributed to their development, making them stronger and more capable. The elders knew that this was only the beginning. Humans had demonstrated their potential in small but undeniable ways, and the galaxy had yet to see the full extent of their abilities. The stage was being set for a momentous rise, one that would eventually force even the most arrogant civilizations to acknowledge the unstoppable nature of humanity. The galaxy was changing, and the once arrogant members of the Galactic Council were beginning to feel the first hints of fear. That humans, underestimated for so long, had revealed themselves to be far more capable than anyone had imagined. The initial encounters with the Council's scouting fleet had shaken their confidence, and reports from multiple sources confirmed what the elders had been warning about for centuries. Humans were not only clever and resourceful, but they were also unstoppable when properly challenged. The Council, which had spent centuries confident in its power and control, now faced a species that defied all their expectations. As the humans grew more confident in their abilities, the elders watched closely, understanding that the moment of true confrontation was approaching. Humans had learned quickly from the first encounters. They had studied the movements of the Council fleets, anticipated their strategies, and developed countermeasures that combined intelligence, creativity, and resourcefulness. No longer were humans just defending their territory, they were actively planning, strategizing, and preparing for larger conflicts. Their ingenuity had evolved into strategy, and their resilience had grown into an unstoppable force. The turning point came when humans demonstrated not just their military capability, but their ability to think several steps ahead. The Council had assumed that humans acted purely on instinct, reacting to immediate threats without long-term planning. They were wrong. Humans had begun to anticipate challenges before they arose, using observation, analysis, and experimentation to create solutions that caught even the most experienced Council strategists off guard. They built networks of communication and coordination that allowed them to respond to threats with unprecedented efficiency. Every move was calculated, every action purposeful, and every failure turned into a lesson that made them stronger. The humans' ability to adapt quickly became their greatest strength. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, they found ways to survive and turn situations to their advantage. Small fleets, previously considered insignificant, were now capable of disrupting the movements of much larger council forces. Humans utilized the natural environment, the positions of planets, asteroids, and gravitational fields, as strategic advantages. They combined these with technological improvisations, using clever tools and systems to outmaneuver opponents. What other species might consider chaos, humans transformed into opportunity. Their ability to innovate under pressure became legendary, and the Council was forced to acknowledge that human adaptability was unlike anything they had encountered before. One of the most striking developments during this period was humans' approach to diplomacy and alliances. While they were often underestimated as a violent or primitive species, humans demonstrated the ability to build connections with other civilizations in subtle but powerful ways. They were able to turn potential enemies into hesitant allies, forming partnerships that provided strategic advantages in battle. This combination of diplomacy, strategy, and unpredictability made humans even more formidable. They were not just reacting to challenges, they were shaping the circumstances around them, using both intellect and emotional intelligence to expand their influence in ways the Council had never anticipated. The elders observed that humans had begun to display creativity on a scale that was unparalleled in the galaxy. They were not just using existing knowledge, they were creating new methods, new technologies, and new ways of thinking. Their innovations were practical, effective, and often deceptively simple, giving them an advantage in situations where sheer power alone would have failed. Humans had an instinct for problem-solving that went beyond standard tactics. They could see opportunities and solutions that others could not, turning limited resources into powerful assets. Every encounter with Council forces taught them new lessons, refining their abilities and expanding their influence. Even the Council's most advanced commanders were shocked by the humans' unpredictability. Unlike other species that relied on rigid hierarchies or programmed tactics, humans were flexible, creative, and capable of independent thought under extreme pressure. Their ships, though technologically less advanced, were used in ways that maximized efficiency and surprise. Humans coordinated attacks, defenses, and counterattacks with precision, often outthinking opponents who assumed superiority based on technology alone. Their adaptability, combined with relentless determination, made them a species that could not be predicted or controlled. The humans' ability to persevere in the face of adversity also became a defining trait. They were willing to take risks that other species would avoid, not recklessly, but with calculated courage. Their willingness to push boundaries, to explore untested strategies, and to improvise in critical moments allowed them to achieve victories that seemed impossible. Every challenge they faced strengthened their resolve, teaching them to overcome fear, uncertainty, and the limitations of their technology. Where others might retreat or surrender, humans pressed forward, using every available resource to secure success. The elders recognized that this was the moment when humans began to surpass expectations in a visible and undeniable way. It was no longer a question of potential. Humans were actively demonstrating capabilities that demanded attention. They were resilient, resourceful, creative, and intelligent. They were forming alliances, mastering strategy, and proving that they could survive and thrive even under extreme pressure. The Council, which had once mocked their existence, could no longer ignore the truth. Humans were not merely a primitive species, they were an unstoppable force in the making. Humanity's rising influence became clear in the battles that unfolded across the galaxy. Every engagement revealed new layers of human capability. Small, agile fleets could outmaneuver larger ships, using ingenuity and coordination rather than brute strength. Humans devised tactics that leveraged their knowledge of physics, planetary systems, and timing in ways that gave them an unexpected advantage. They were unpredictable, adaptive, and relentless. Their enemies struggled to keep up, often finding themselves outsmarted at every turn. The elders, watching from a distance, understood that these victories were building momentum that would be nearly impossible to stop. Humans were not just surviving, they were transforming the battlefield itself. They used deception, misdirection, and innovation to manipulate their enemies' perceptions. Council forces, used to predictable strategies, were caught off guard time and time again. Humans turned disadvantages into advantages, weaknesses into strengths, and setbacks into opportunities. They were learning faster than their opponents, evolving in real time, and using each engagement as a classroom for further improvement. This rapid growth and learning ability made humans more dangerous with every encounter. As humans continued to demonstrate their capabilities, the Council began to experience panic. They had once assumed dominance over the galaxy, believing their technological superiority and experience guaranteed control. Now they were forced to confront a species that could not be easily categorized, predicted, or defeated. Reports from the front lines detailed human victories, clever strategies, and innovative solutions to problems that had confounded generations of council commanders. The laughter that once greeted the elders' warnings had turned to disbelief and fear. Humans were proving that their rise was unstoppable. The elders understood that humans were entering a stage of exponential growth. Their victories and adaptations were cumulative, each success built upon previous lessons, creating a species that was rapidly approaching a level of capability and influence previously thought impossible. Humans were mastering the art of strategy, learning to coordinate large-scale operations, and combining creativity with resourcefulness in ways that gave them a decisive edge. They were no longer merely participants in galactic events, they were becoming key players whose actions could alter the balance of power. This period also highlighted the humans' remarkable resilience and emotional intelligence. They were capable of leading, motivating, and inspiring one another under the most challenging circumstances. Human leaders emerged who could think several steps ahead, anticipate enemy moves, and rally their people toward common goals. They combined tactical knowledge with empathy, intuition, and moral judgment, creating teams that were not just effective, but cohesive and committed. The combination of intellect, adaptability, and emotional strength made humans a species unlike any other. By the end of this period, humans had proven conclusively that the elders' warnings had been accurate. The council could no longer dismiss their potential. Humans had demonstrated their intelligence, creativity, adaptability, and resilience. They had learned to strategize, innovate, and collaborate in ways that allowed them to overcome far more powerful opponents. Each victory, each display of ingenuity, and each successful maneuver reinforced the reality that humans were unstoppable when properly challenged. The elders watched with satisfaction, knowing that the seeds of greatness they had observed for centuries were finally bearing fruit. The story of humanity's rise during this turning point became a lesson for the galaxy. It demonstrated that raw power alone was not enough to dominate the stars. Intelligence, adaptability, creativity, and resilience were equally, if not more, important. Humans had combined these qualities in ways that allowed them to exceed all expectations. Their actions were shaping a new reality in which the previously assumed hierarchy of power no longer applied. The galaxy had underestimated humans, and that miscalculation would have lasting consequences, even as humans continued to grow stronger. They remained grounded in their instinct to survive, learn, and improve. Every battle, every strategic decision, and every alliance contributed to a cumulative increase in capability. Humans were becoming more than just a species. They were becoming a force that could influence events on a galactic scale. Their ingenuity, resilience, and adaptability made them nearly unstoppable, and the elders recognized that this was only the beginning. The humans' transformation during this period marked the climax of their early rise. They had moved from being underestimated and dismissed to becoming a species whose capabilities could no longer be ignored. Their victories were not just about survival, they were demonstrations of intelligence, strategy, and resourcefulness. They had proven that creativity, adaptability, and resilience were as powerful as technology and weaponry. The council, once confident and mocking, was now facing a reality they could no longer deny. Humans were unstoppable, and the galaxy would never view them in the same way again. The galaxy had changed forever. That humans, once considered a primitive and insignificant species, had proven themselves to be far more than anyone had imagined. The Galactic Council, which had spent centuries laughing at the warnings of the elders, now faced the undeniable reality. Humans were unstoppable. Their intelligence, adaptability, creativity, and resilience had allowed them to overcome challenges that would have crushed other species. Every engagement, every battle, and every strategic decision had built a foundation that was now visible across the stars. The elders, who had long predicted this rise, watched with a mixture of satisfaction and relief, knowing that their warnings had finally been validated. The council's members were forced into reflection and, for many, shame. Their arrogance had blinded them for centuries. They had dismissed the elders' wisdom, believing their own experience, technology, and power were sufficient to dominate the galaxy. They had mocked humans, underestimating their potential at every turn. Now, reports poured in from multiple systems. Human fleets had outmaneuvered and defeated forces far more technologically advanced. Humans had formed unexpected alliances, and humans had demonstrated strategies and innovations that no other species had thought possible. Every piece of information chipped away at the Council's confidence, revealing the depth of their misjudgment. Humans, however, did not act out of revenge or arrogance. Their rise was not fueled by the desire to punish those who had underestimated them. Rather, it was a natural outcome of their resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. They continued to advance, exploring new technologies, expanding their reach, and preparing for challenges that lay ahead. Each success built upon previous victories, and their learning curve accelerated. Humans had proven time and again that their greatest strengths were not weapons or ships, but their ability to adapt, innovate, and collaborate under pressure. One of the most astonishing aspects of the humans' rise was their ability to turn potential enemies into allies. They demonstrated diplomacy that surprised even the most seasoned members of the Council. Where other species relied solely on force, humans combined intelligence with empathy, communication, and strategic alliances. They built networks of cooperation that strengthened their position and created opportunities that would have been impossible through combat alone. This balance of diplomacy and tactical prowess made humans not only a military threat but also a force that could influence the political and social structures of the galaxy. The elders recognized that humans had reached a level of strategic mastery that few other civilizations could attain. They did not rely solely on brute strength or technological superiority. Instead, they observed, analyzed, and adapted, turning every challenge into a learning experience. Their victories were cumulative, each one contributing to a growing understanding of interstellar tactics, human behavior, and creative problem-solving. Humans had transformed unpredictability and ingenuity into weapons as powerful as any advanced fleet or weapon system, and the Council could no longer deny the truth. The turning point for the Council came when humans achieved a series of victories that were both decisive and symbolic. These battles demonstrated that humans were capable not only of defending themselves but also of shaping events across the galaxy. Small fleets and modest forces had repeatedly outsped and outmaneuvered much larger and more technologically advanced opponents. The humans' capacity for innovation, quick thinking, and adaptation had become legendary. Their ability to respond to new threats with speed and precision left the Council scrambling to reassess their strategies and assumptions. Humans' unpredictability became one of their most formidable assets. Unlike other species, which often relied on rigid protocols and predictable tactics, humans could improvise under pressure, turning setbacks into opportunities. They used the environment, technology, and psychology in ways that confounded their enemies. Every encounter was a lesson, every challenge an opportunity to learn and improve. By observing humans, the elders noted that their growth was exponential. Unlike civilizations that plateaued after reaching a certain level of development, humans continued to evolve, adapt, and excel at an astonishing pace. This period also highlighted the humans' incredible resilience. They faced obstacles that would have destroyed other species, yet they persisted. Economic crises, natural disasters, wars, and internal conflict. These experiences contributed to their development. Humans learned to endure, to rebuild, and to improve themselves with each challenge. Their determination was matched by creativity, enabling them to find solutions where others saw only failure. This combination of endurance, intelligence, and adaptability had made humans a species that could not be ignored. As humans consolidated their achievements, they also began to influence the wider galaxy in profound ways. Their victories inspired other species to reconsider their assumptions about power, strategy, and adaptability. Some civilizations, once confident in their superiority, began to seek alliances with humans, recognizing the advantage of collaboration. Others, who had previously ignored or underestimated humans, were forced to rethink their strategies and prepare for encounters with a species that defied expectation. Humans' influence was growing not only through strength but also through wisdom, foresight, and innovation. The Council, facing mounting evidence of human superiority, convened emergency meetings. Members who had once mocked the elders now had to confront their own arrogance and there was no longer room for disbelief or denial. The humans had proven themselves, not through luck or brute force, but through a combination of intelligence, adaptability, resilience, and collaboration. Even the most skeptical council members were forced to acknowledge the reality. Humans were a dominant force in the galaxy, and their rise was unstoppable. Despite their growing power, humans maintained a humility that contrasted sharply with the arrogance of the council. They did not seek domination for its own sake. Instead, they focused on survival, improvement, and preparedness for future challenges. This balance of ambition and restraint made them even more formidable. They combined strategic intelligence with ethical decision-making, learning to use their capabilities responsibly. The elders observed that this was a hallmark of their strength. Humans' rise was sustainable because it was grounded in practical intelligence, moral judgment, and adaptability. Humans' creativity continued to astonish the galaxy. They developed technologies and strategies that were innovative, efficient, and effective. They were able to take limited resources and turn them into decisive advantages. Their ingenuity was not limited to tools and machines. It extended to tactics, communication, and alliances. Every encounter, every problem, and every challenge was approached with a combination of imagination, logic, and adaptability that made humans nearly impossible to defeat. Even those who opposed them had to respect their abilities and learn from their methods. As humans' reputation grew, the elders realized that the seeds they had observed for centuries had fully matured. The warnings they had given to the council were no longer hypothetical. They were visible in every human achievement, every strategic victory, and every display of intelligence and creativity. Humans had demonstrated that their potential was limitless, that they could adapt, innovate, and overcome any obstacle. The council's dismissal of the elders' advice had been a grave mistake, one that highlighted the danger of underestimating a species whose growth was subtle yet unstoppable, the final confirmation of humans. unstoppable nature came when they demonstrated mastery over challenges that had previously seemed insurmountable. Whether through strategic brilliance, technological innovation, or diplomatic skill, humans consistently exceeded expectations. They were able to coordinate complex operations, manage resources efficiently, and outthink opponents who had assumed superiority. Their ability to learn, adapt, and evolve was unparalleled, and it became clear that humans were capable of shaping the galaxy's future in ways that no one had predicted. In the aftermath of these achievements, the Council was forced to publicly acknowledge human strength. The laughter that had once greeted the Elders' warnings was replaced by a cautious respect tinged with fear. Humans, far from primitive, had proven themselves as a species that could not be underestimated. The Elders, watching from afar, knew that this recognition was long overdue. Humans had earned their place in the galaxy, not through arrogance or power alone, but through resilience, intelligence, adaptability, and creativity. Humans' rise also served as a lesson for the galaxy. It demonstrated that power was not measured solely by technology, numbers, or historical dominance. Intelligence, adaptability, resilience, creativity, and the ability to learn from experience were equally, if not more, important. Humans had combined all of these qualities in ways that allowed them to overcome challenges that would have destroyed other civilizations. Their story became a symbol of what a species could achieve when underestimated, tested, and pushed to its limits. By the end of this period, humans had not only secured their survival, they had transformed the perception of their species across the galaxy. They were recognized as a force that could not be ignored, challenged, or predicted. The Elders' warnings had been vindicated, and the Council had been forced to confront its own misjudgment. Humans had demonstrated that they were not only capable of surviving in the galaxy but of shaping it. Their rise was complete, and their potential was limitless. In the final analysis, humans' journey illustrated the importance of resilience, intelligence, and adaptability. They had faced doubt, ridicule, and near impossible challenges, yet they had prevailed. They had learned, grown, and innovated in ways that no one had anticipated. The Council had underestimated them at their own peril, and the Elders had been proven correct in their warnings. Humanity's story was now a legend, a reminder that underestimation can be dangerous and that even the smallest, seemingly insignificant species can achieve greatness. Humans, having proven themselves across multiple dimensions, military, technological, strategic, and diplomatic, now stood as a beacon of potential in the galaxy. They had shown that perseverance, creativity, and collaboration could overcome even the most powerful adversaries. Their victories were not just physical, they were intellectual, strategic, and moral. The Council had learned a hard lesson. Humans were unstoppable, and the galaxy would never underestimate them again.